So I've got to ask you the important questions I'm sure a lot of people have. Is this a good career path? Are there a lot of opportunities? Does it pay well? Or should I just do red teaming?
I would argue, I don't have the evidence to support this right in front of me, but the number of jobs, like if there were 10 jobs, I would say like there's 1 pen testing and then there's like 5 GRC and 4, SecOps or blue team type roles. So right away, like if you think you're going to get into pen testing, I hope you do. I super excited for you, but you've got an uphill climb. And I also want to point out, a lot of people are pivoting from their career into cybersecurity. You've worked in marketing for 15 years, or you left the workforce to be a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
Like, dude, if you're dealing with like a 2-year-old, you're dealing with like a really irritable, someone who doesn't understand. Guess what? Welcome to the business. Like you're talking to an executive right there. If you're a lifelong learner, GRC is where you want to go. If you like to read, GRC is where you want to go.
Everyone, David Bumble here with a very special guest. Gerald, great to meet you in person, man.
Thank you,
David. It's been too long.
Yeah, it really has been. Thank you so much for having me on.
We were going to have an interview, and then unfortunately I had to cancel it. So I'm glad that we could meet in person and do this. You're well known for many things, very well known in cyber, very respected, lots of experience. But I want to ask you about GRC because that's one of the big topics that you are an expert in. So take us on the journey. What is GRC? Why do I care? Why is it important?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, David. I'm really glad to be here with you in person and do this. So I love GRC, which stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. And as far as I'm concerned, it is a foundational requirement for any information security program or cybersecurity program. So unfortunately, it's not super hot, super sexy.
It's not Mr. Robot hacking into the Pentagon.
Yeah, like Tom Cruise is definitely not doing a Mission Impossible GRC. Like he's like, oh, we're here to audit your compliance. So, but it's fundamentally important. And the reason it's so important is because, first of all, GRC is the critical element between IT and the business.
Yeah.
And as much as like 0 days and like Kali Linux and as cool as tech is, and everybody that's in tech loves tech, it's cool, but the business doesn't care. Like,
exactly.
If you're a manufacturer, you're into making widgets, you're into making money, and like your elite 0 day stuff is irrelevant. And it took a while to get around to that, but that GRC, they're the ones who interface with the business and understand what are the priorities, because we can't, this is 2025, we can't be the office of no. We have to be the office of yes, but let's do it in a secure way. And I'll give you a perfect example from my history, right? So CISO, I'm working at a manufacturing company, and I discover there's some remote access situation. Engineers installed some type of Google remote access solution. And the reason is because this individual, he works all weekend, right? The business loves this guy because he works 80 hours a week and they pay him for 40, right?
Yep.
You can't be like, you can't remote in over the weekend because the business is like, are you joking me? This guy's like a free resource. Like we've got to make it happen. So one of those ones was, okay, he didn't do it out of malicious intent. He did it because he needed a solution and we hadn't provided him one. So as GRC, I come in, understand the business need, and then say, okay, like I need budget to purchase an approved solution that we're going to roll out to the entire company, and, engineer, like, let's go ahead and use it this way. So now the engineer is happy, the business is happy because the guy's still able to crank out work, and I'm happy because I have visibility and eyes on and can kind of control the choke point of this dude coming in to the environment. And that's just like one example of GRC. It's governance. It's like, how do we do cybersecurity here? What is normal? What are the standards? What do we want to be our approved way of doing things, and then executing on that. And by the way, another important thing is you need to understand that we will always have residual risk. You're not going to get infinite money. You're not going to get infinite time. You're not going to have infinite headcount. So you have to accept some level of risk. GRC, like when you get more senior as a practitioner, like that's what your job is. Your job is to understand what are we willing to accept, and not like, oh, we don't accept any risk. No, it's like you've got to accept some risk. So what is that? And then having the actual intelligent decision making on, we're going to allow this, but we're not going to allow this. And then for the things we're not going to allow, like what's the order of operations? Because again, you can't just push a magic button. It's not a video game where like you just apply a cheat code and all of a sudden you've got everything. You need to understand what order to do these things. Like multi-factor authentication definitely should come before DLP, for example, because it's so much value in risk reduction.
In 2025, are businesses more inclined to listen to you Is it harder to get them to implement security, or is it easier these days?
Interesting question. I personally think it's easier these days only because as a society, we've moved very forward into having technology in our pockets. People do online banking. Multi-factor authentication, as an example, is getting pushed out to people's personal email, to people's personal banking. So the idea of security controls has kind of been ingratiated into normal standards. So people are used to it. Plus, like, major news stories, like, you can't go a day really without like a ransomware incident happening. And while we focus in the industry on cyber-specific stories, something like the SolarWinds hack a couple years ago, or Kaseya, or the telecoms, right? Just recently, Assault Typhoon, was getting into U.S. telecoms, like, the major phone carriers, right? That's mainstream news. Plus, David, I'm sure you have multiple identity theft protections because multiple companies care about your security and privacy, but lost your data. So like these mainstream personal impacts, they happen to the board members, they happen to the CEO. So when you're starting to have these conversations, you're already on second base instead of trying to walk and get on base. So I love that. Again, you got to remember though, like at the end of the day, it's still a business. They still have P&L. They still have revenue targets and stuff. So you're not going to get infinite money. Everybody, like, one of my favorite things is business will say like, oh, we absolutely will not tolerate that. And then you're like, well, it's going to cost $200,000 to not tolerate that.
Exactly.
They're like, we can tolerate a little bit of it. Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make, right? The people in the C-suite are now listening to you more because it's all in the news, and they realize this stuff's they're going to have to implement something, otherwise they're going to get hacked.
Right. And shareholders, if it's a publicly traded company, they have to answer them because those questions are coming out. Board members, they may not understand like what is ransomware, but they know that they're supposed to be asking that question and getting some type of response from them. So, it is easier, frankly. But I will say also, I feel personally, because I've been in the industry 20 years, I feel like we've come a long way from being able to effectively communicate to that audience, because speaking to the C-suite is a different skill set than talking to your IT team or even the business in general. Like, they want short, punchy things, bullet points, and it has to be about money, basically. If you're not talking money, the businesses, they're going to tune you out, and like, you've already lost that conversation.
So, got to ask you the important questions I'm sure a lot of people have. Is this a good career path? Are there a lot of opportunities? Does it pay well, or should I just do red teaming?
Oh my gosh. So it's funny you say that, David. So, red teaming and pen testing, very, very hot, very, very cool. But if you look at the market space, a lot of pen testing, red teaming, outside of like financial services, which will have in-house teams, it's usually like boutique consulting agencies and stuff. And I would argue, I don't have the evidence to support this right in front of me, but the number of jobs, like if there were 10 jobs, I would say like there's 1 pen testing, and then there's like 5 GRC and 4, SecOps or blue team type roles. So right away, like if you think you're going to get into pen testing, I hope you do. I super excited for you, but you've got an uphill climb. For GRC, honestly, I think in 2025, GRC is exploding because businesses, rather small or large, know that they need to do something cybersecurity. And the first person that they're going to get is a general practitioner, but they're going to be expected to be the person that you call when you have a question. And that's you interfacing with the business, which is straight up GRC. Now, I will tell you, like, you can have multiple hats, right? So I've worked in smaller orgs where I have to be the blue teamer and the GRC person, but it's very hot. On top of that, and I know we spoke about this off camera, CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification in the United States specifically, is come into law or regulation or whatever. And any organization that wants to do business with the Department of Defense, which is massive, right? The defense industrial base makes a lot of money. If they're holding any type of like controlled unclassified information, anything sensitive, whether you're making a ball bearing for an Abrams tank or you're handling the blueprints for like the new F-75 Superjet, that information needs to be protected. And as a private sector organization, the government is now pushing down security requirements down on you, and you have to attest that you are doing it. Audit, which is a key skill set of any GRC practitioner. So if an organization, and again, let's get back to the money, right? So if an organization cannot bid on a multi-million-dollar contract until they prove that they have security controls in place, and they do that through audit, and by the way, having someone come in and tell them what the controls are and how to roll them out, like, they won't get that money. So right now we're talking, okay, I can hire someone for $100,000 a year. Let's make it nice, easy numbers. $100,000 a year, so I can potentially win a multi-million-dollar contract. Business is going to do that over and over and over again. So as far as I'm concerned, I think GRC is not just on the rise. I think it's explosive and like the right place to be.
Gerald, I got to ask this question because a lot of people ask me this all the time, and I'm sure you get it all the time. What should I actually do? Cybersecurity is vast. Red teaming is really cool. It's in the movies, all the rest of it. I often get told blue team is a good place to go. GRC now. I mean, what do I do? What would you advise?
Yeah, I love working in cyber, and you hit the nail on the head. The way I heard it explained that really crystallized for me is saying you want to work in cybersecurity, which is like what a lot of people say, is like saying you want to work in science, right? Like a biologist is way different than an engineer or a rocket scientist, right? So saying you want to work in cyber is like, it's too broad. You got to get more niche down. So for all of the areas, there's pros and cons, right? And you obviously want to work in something that gets you excited and you're passionate about. So like, I wouldn't just go for a job just because of the money. But on the red side, yes, it's super cool and you can do all sorts of really fun stuff. But that's the pro of it. And there's a lot of tools out there. But the con is there's like less opportunity. There's a huge gap between entry level and like seasoned practitioner. There's a huge gap there. So for me, it's fun, but like not my jam. On the blue side, SecOps, there's a lot of opportunity, right? SOCs, MSSPs, MDR, and you can Google these acronyms. Basically, they're like outsourced security operations center. Ton of opportunity, especially at the junior level. But you've got to be mindful. At 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve, like the SOC is who gets called when a bad guy bunches in. So you got to be like that. You got to be okay with that. It can be very, very grueling and emotionally. And typically, the junior people, they get the tougher shifts, right? They're the ones working overnight. But it's really rewarding. You get to do a lot of fun stuff, but just be aware that you're likely to age like 8 years in your first 1 year of working in SOC. So it's cool. And then GRC, that's my bread and butter. So you probably want to ask somebody who's a little bit more independent and not biased, but I love GRC. I love, if you're a lifelong learner, GRC is where you want to go. If you like to read, GRC is where you want to go. I love big pictures and comprehensive frameworks and understanding. And something like GRC, if you're going to roll out like a cybersecurity framework or something, you're looking at the entire workflow or life cycle of a program. Everything from like, what do we have to control here? And what options do we have? And the puzzle, the challenge of like, all right, we only have a $200,000 budget and we only have 2 resources. So, how do we spend those resources? It's almost like a video game, like when you're building a sports character and you only have so many tokens to put on the different attributes. So for me, I love that. And then you get to interface with the business. I'm a people person. I love communicating. So for me, it's like I get to do that and get paid. I'll take some of that. The downside with GRC is, and I've been on a mission to change this. The downside is that it kind of gets poo-pooed on by the industry as like not important or not really having value in cyber risk reduction because it's less technical. But if you're okay with that, get on.
But if you get paid, people in sales, right?
Yeah.
People often talk down to salespeople, but if you can sell, you can make a lot of money and have a good life.
Absolutely. And another thing that I think people should know about is that as much as there are SOC jobs for junior level people, GRC has a lot of audit jobs in the government sector. Now, I worked in United States federal IT space, so this might be different in other countries. But if you think about this for a minute, federal information systems, right? So Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, wherever, they need to comply with a law called FISMA. FISMA dictates that you have to have these security controls in place. How do you prove it? You get audited. It needs to be independently audited. The government outsources this work to private sector consulting businesses. And, I don't know if you can name the names, but like I worked at Booz Allen for a number of years.
You can name whatever you like, dude.
Okay, so I worked at Booz Allen, loved Booz Allen for a number of years, but like Booz Allen, Deloitte, Accenture, these large firms that win these huge contracts. Now, let's just get back to talking about the business for a second. If they win a contract, it says you're going to put 2 people on at $200 an hour to do this work. If they hire me and I'm $180 an hour, well, they get a $20 profit margin. If they hire a junior person with no experience, they can pay them $40 an hour and get $160. So these consulting firms are incentivized to hire junior talent. simply from a cash flow or revenue perspective. And then they'll put one senior person like me on to make sure the junior people are doing the work correctly. So as far as breaking in goes, I think that's a huge area of opportunity, especially if you're into GRC, is that federal space. And again, with CMMC, that's going to blow up too, because those private consulting firms are going to get all that work to do independent audits of CMMC.
People are different, right? So some of us are more introverted. Some of us are more extroverted. Some of us like dealing with people. Some of us don't. There's opportunity for all of us, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, introverted people can be successful cybersecurity practitioners. It is a little bit of a challenge because you do have to interface with the business and communicate, but it really depends on where you want to take your career. Like if you want to be a CISO, you're going to have to talk to the business. You're going to have to make compelling arguments to get budget and stuff, but you can work on vulnerability management and be able to do patching and communicate and do kind of risk assessments on, does this really need to be patched? Or this is internet facing and it's actively being exploited right now. Like this needs to get fixed right now. You'll still have to talk to the business a little bit, but you have opportunities to do less talking, right? So you can be successful even if you're introverted. And honestly, if you get excited about GRC, you're even if you're introverted, you're going to want to talk about it. So you're going to be able to share that knowledge.
Talk to your younger self. If you were starting today, like a lot of people are, would you recommend this as a career path?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity evangelist. Like I love it. I think about it. I work it. I talk about it. I love cybersecurity. It's so awesome. It pays well, which if you're financially motivated, there you go. And there's a lot of opportunity. Every business needs it at this point. There's a rich community. There's so many free resources out there now too. Like back when I came up in the 90s, like there weren't a lot of resources that you could get access to, or they were like really expensive, or they were for like military and government only. So the playing field and the democratization of learning has been amplified huge. So I think it's awesome. If I could go back to my younger self, I will tell you the one thing I would say is you need to network and engage with practitioners. When I was going through undergraduate, I got a computer science degree, and I literally thought, this is so dumb, but this is 18-year-old Jerry. I thought you got a computer science degree and just like walked out and like you were handed a job. And it's not that way. Like I had to actually work construction for a few months because I couldn't find a job. And I was like, this is not what I expected. I tell people all the time, like, if you're going to school or if you're even in like a boot camp or like at a conference or whatever, engage with people, tell them what you're doing, ask them questions, be part of it, right? And you will inevitably build a network and find out about jobs, because a lot of jobs in cyber, for better or worse, aren't published all the time. And the reason is, as a hiring manager, as a CISO, right? Like I have a problem today. Right? And if I know David's looking for work, I'm not going to go through the trouble of opening a rec, getting resumes, reviewing them. It's going to take me 3 months to fill the job. David's right next to me and he can do the job. David, do you want to go? Let's go. So that happens all the time. And the only reason I know that David's looking for work is because David and I network and he told me he's looking. So those type of conversations happen and you have to take advantage of it. And if you're introverted, don't worry, there's ways for introverted people to engage with communities, right? So that's what I would say to my younger self. Definitely get into it, but definitely take advantage of networking and being part of a community.
And your community is a great one that they can join. It's live Monday to Friday, is that right?
Yeah, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We do a live stream podcast. There's, 500 active members live in chat. We also have a Discord server, which is like our main hub where our community engages. Give us
the name.
The link. So if you go to simplycyber.io/Discord, it'll take you right to it. You can get in there. We've got an onboarding process for everybody. We want to make it as frictionless as possible. It's free, so don't think that this is some type of like but you just get in there and say hi. We have different, like, what do you want to get into? You want to be GRC? You want to be red? Like, we have different areas. We have experts in all of the fields who are there to help. Here's a interesting truth that you wouldn't know unless someone in the industry told you. A lot of people who are senior in their career want to mentor junior people because they either had a tough time coming up themselves or they've just reached a level where that's satisfying them to mentor downward. And sometimes you can only mentor the people who are working at your business, but with the Discord community with Simply Cyber, you have, it's you, right? Like you need mentorship. There's people who want to do it. So we're making those connections and it's just phenomenal. Again, like the core values of Simply Cyber, support, inclusion, empowerment, it's going on, and like to see it manifest is just something special.
Okay. So you've sold it to me, right? Good money. It's a lot of demand.
Yep.
how do I become like you? How is there a roadmap? How do I study if I'm just beginning in my journey or I want to switch careers? How do I do it?
All right. So another thing I'll point out too is of all the disciplines in the industry, you do have to have some technical chops, of course, but GRC, I would argue, is the one that has the least steep on-ramp on a technical perspective. So you can be less technical and get in. Now, I used to get this question all the time as a GRC professional and one who's recognized for GRC. I get this question all the time. I will tell you, it's a multifaceted answer. Number one, the answer used to be NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is basically a government think tank, has released these special publications called the 800 series. So if you Google NIST SP 800 series, you'll get all these documents. And 800-37 is the risk management framework. You can read that. It's very dense, it's very dry, but it's comprehensive.
Yep.
You can read NIST 800-53, which is basically like a dictionary of controls, so you can understand what controls are and how can they be implemented and stuff like that. That is really dry, and without it being rooted and grounded in some type of practice, it's very difficult to understand the value of each element of it. So that's the old answer. Now, I will say, David, this is a shameless plug, but like
I was going to ask you must have a course or something.
I do have a course. So I have a course called the GRC Analyst Masterclass. And like literally, I did not develop this to get rich or whatever. Like I literally developed it because people would ask me this question and I felt like such a jerk telling them to go read NIST special publications because it was the right answer and it was the best answer at the time. So I literally went and made this course, which is designed for the entry-level GRC analyst. Again, I've built programs, there's 5 fundamental skills that an entry-level person should have, and like how to develop policy, how to do end-user awareness training, how to assess risk, how to audit. And I basically give you theory, give you lecture, and then give you practical labs, which you can then turn around and be able to show. So for me, like I love it. If you go to simplycyber.io/GRC, it'll take you right there. I've got a lot of people who have had really positive experiences, but you don't have to take my course. I'm just telling you, like it's one way to do it. I will also say, just pick up a compliance framework like NIST Cybersecurity framework is a good one. CIS-18 is a good one. Look at them. And auditing is the first really junior level thing that we would ask someone to do is audit something. Like it's supposed to do this. Go see if it's doing this, right? You don't have to understand why we have it. You don't have to understand how it works underneath the hood. Just is it in place? Yes or no? This is audit and it's basic. And if you look at one of these frameworks, you can look and say, okay, like asset inventory. Are you guys tracking your assets? Like yes or no? Hardware, software, data. Like it's as simple as that. So you can get going. The other thing I would point out, a lot of people who are on the outside looking in believe that it's technical skills that you need to develop, right? It's IT, it's cyber, it's got to be technical.
But if you're interfacing with the business,
you have to be able to communicate. So soft skills are huge. And I also want to point out, a lot of people are pivoting from their career into cybersecurity. You've worked in marketing for 15 years, or you left the workforce to be a stay-at-home parent. Like, dude, if you're dealing with like a 2-year-old, you're dealing with like a really irritable, someone who doesn't understand. Guess what? Welcome to the business. Like you're talking to an executive right there. So, you got boss baby, but you're actually developing skills. So there's a lot of transferable skills that people don't realize they have that you can instantly get value, especially in the GRC space.
So Gerald, I've got to ask you, people who are watching, some people can't afford perhaps a course. I don't know how much it normally costs, but can we perhaps give away a few places and perhaps have a discount code for some people watching?
Yeah, heck yeah. Like I love Bombo. I love your work, David.
Appreciate it, man.
And yeah, of course. So yeah, for your community, I would love to give away 10 seats in the GRC Analyst Masterclass. And you can distribute them however you see fit. But
link below.
Yeah, link below. And I love whoever gets in there. Definitely, congratulations and reach out to me. Like we've got a Discord server community. I would love to connect with you. And if you are not one of the winners of the 10, I would love to give a Bomble 10, so BOMBAL 10 discount for 10% off. It's already priced quite reasonably, honestly. It's at $149 because I want people to be able to get access to this. But yeah, so 10% off for everybody in your community.
Now, you run a really exciting show. So you got to tell people who haven't seen it what it's about, because I know I pulled you actually out of your live show just a few minutes ago. So please tell people, what it's about. I believe it's live, so they can ask you questions live.
Yeah. So Simply Cyber has multiple facets to it. We have tons of podcasts, but one that I'm very proud of, in fact, it was the SANS Difference Maker Award 2024 Podcast of the Year winner.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah, is the Simply Cyber Daily Cyber Threat Brief. Now, it's a live 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time show, and we go through 8 cybersecurity stories of the day. So like it's very current news. And basically here's the story. And then I pause and I spend about 10 minutes distilling some type of valuable practitioner knowledge into what that story is. So let's just say it's like a ransomware attack, right? Like it doesn't matter if it was a manufacturing company, healthcare, whatever. Maybe for that particular story, it resonates with me that like, hey, you should be doing tabletop exercises, or you should go threat hunting for the particular indicators of compromise for this ransomware threat actor in your own environment, because you might already be compromised around the world. And we ask people where they are and we light up a map, and we have Australia, middle of the night, people are getting up. We have Malaysia, Thailand. We have South America, like Chile. Of course, North America is always lit up. Europe is in there, right? England. So it's really awesome. And really, honestly, to take it a step back, Simply Cyber's core values, what we're doing, it's all about support. So we want to enable people to be able to ask a question, feel vulnerable, but get the support they need. And if anyone doesn't align with that, we kind of cleanse them from the environment because it's toxic and we don't have time for that. We also are big on collaboration. So I've got a lot of experience, but I don't have all the answers. But we have community members that are fully invested in helping people level up, and they can answer those questions. So not only is it like the daily brief, but it's also intelligence sharing and knowledge sharing, resource sharing. And on top of all of that, like, the community itself is just so engaged and so awesome. So if you're trying to figure out where your people are, where your tribe is, like, you can come in and check it out. It's phenomenal. I love it. And then it's an addition to the daily cyber threat brief, but we also have another show from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. called Jaw Jack. And it just naturally transitions from the daily cyber threat brief, but it's a 30-minute Ask Me Anything mentoring session. So it's very difficult for me to do one-on-one mentoring because I just get hammered all the time by people. So I've carved out 30 minutes a day. And if you just show up and chat, take the initiative, be there. That's step one. Ask a question. I will give you an answer, or I will find someone to get you that answer. So again, we're trying to really help people and empower them to take the steps they need in order to have a successful cybersecurity career. And finally, spoiler alert, if you're looking to get a job in cybersecurity, you will absolutely be asked in any job interview, how do you stay current? Our industry changes so quickly. You need to have an answer to that. And the Daily Cyber Threat Brief is a phenomenal answer to that question.
So for everyone watching, I've put the links below. Gerald, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, David.